Well, it is great to be with you this morning, having spent the weekend with the guys. I kind of feel like the best thing to do, since you don't know me, is kind of introduce myself to you a little bit more personally. And the thing you need to know about me is I'm fundamentally a loser. And what I mean by that is I lose things. Is there anyone else here who has a tendency to misplace things? You know, I can tell this is a church that's a pretty safe place to be, because normally when I ask people if they're losers, they don't raise their hands. They look at me like I'm some kind of a nutcase or something. I mean, who wants to admit publicly that I'm a loser? In fact, I never would have known this about myself, except I came home one day, and I've got kids living all over the place. I mean, I got a son in Washington, D.C. I've got one right now that is over in Oxford, England, and I've got one that's, of course, living in Portland, but he was in Tennessee. Prior to that, he was in Thailand. The one that's in Oxford was in India. The other one has been to Thailand and Indonesia. I mean, these guys are all over the place. So when I come home, and my 3 sons are there, and my wife and 2 of my best friends, I kind of figure, man, this is going to be a cool party. And it's obvious that I'm the guest of honor. And when I sit down, it's an intervention. Yeah, I didn't see this coming at all. And it's pretty, I try to be teachable in all of this, but still my defense mechanisms went off. And my oldest son, speaking on behalf of everyone else, says, Dad, there's something that we all here are together because we love you. So some of you have been there, right? And he said, we just feel like it's best for you and the family for you to know this. You know, we've all been very subtle over the years to try to let you know this, but now we're all together on this. We're one voice. And Dad, we just want you to know you're truly a loser. And it was painful, you know, to actually embrace this. But I embraced this idea. I became so committed to learning not to lose things, not to displace things, that I actually formed a national organization called Losers Anonymous. And I based it on the 12-step process of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was feeling pretty good about the 12-step program, and then I misplaced it. Which kind of bites, you know. But anyway, I had been attending meetings, and I was actually on the wagon for about 6 months. Hadn't lost anything, hadn't misplaced anything. It was really looking good. My life was coming together. I was more confident I wasn't going to lose my wife, my family, my house, my car, or anything else. And so I was out speaking at a church. It's about an hour-and-a-half drive from where I live. And on my way home, I stopped off at Costco to pick up some stuff. And then I went on home. And before I'd even come into the garage, my wife came out to greet me. She said, hon, that wasn't funny. See, I need her here. She knows when to laugh. And actually, I say many things that are not funny at all. But in the churches I pastor, and everyone knows if I think it's funny, she will laugh because she knows it, and that's kind of a cue for everyone else to laugh. She's not here now, however, but Kevin seems to be picking up on that. See, he also says many things that he thinks are funny that no one else does. So, have my water bottle. So anyway, I go to Costco, and needless to say, you can imagine how depressed I was going into Costco because I am now off the wagon. And if you've been in AA, you know, one drink and it's all over. So I go in, I'm kind of bummed down. I go to the customer service counter, and I explain to them that I've lost my billfold. And, of course, I have to have ID, which I have, and I show it to them. And she goes, what's wrong? And I go, well, this is kind of a bummer. And she said, well, why so? Here's your billfold. We've got it. And standing to my right, by the way, this is an important part of the story, is a woman in about her 75s or 80s, and she's got this, like, turquoise blue hair and really cut short, and she's wearing, it's like she just got back from Santa Fe, New Mexico. She's wearing all these silver and gold turquoise bracelets and rings and necklaces, and one of those leather coats that's got the tassels on it. You know what I'm talking about here? And the boots that kind of have a silver smiley face on the end of them. Which I didn't think seemed very New Mexican, but nevertheless, she seemed to think so. And so I told her, I said, well, I'm actually a loser. And she goes, huh? And I go, yeah, I lose things. And I said, I'm a part of LA, Losers Anonymous. And I explained to her that it's an organization for compulsive losers. And I said, you know, and it's every morning when I look in the mirror, I look at myself and I say, I'm Bill, I'm a loser. And the lady to my right was getting increasingly agitated as I talked about this. And she looked at me, she said, that's horrible. You should get out of that organization. This is terrible. You should never talk to yourself that way. And I turned to her and I said, ma'am, it's obvious that you don't understand that the first step in recovery is to embrace the truth. I'm Bill Perkins and I'm a loser. So I got my billfold and I got in my car and I drove away, and I've been gone about 5 minutes when I realized that I left my cell phone back at Costco. And so I returned, and as I did, the girl at the counter was holding it up with a microphone. Loser! It's really funny how one thing, it's kind of funny to joke around about being a loser, but when all of a sudden I actually left my cell phone there, she realized I wasn't joking. That wasn't fun. But anyway, now you know me better than you want to or need to. And I want to be talking about something today that has been very transformational for me. It's been transformational, and it's going to, as I unfold this passage, if you've got your Bible, open it please to John chapter 5. Because as I unpack this passage and the principles in this passage, in a very real sense, this passage and what happens here has become a part of my life story in the last 2 years. I'm going to be talking about some things that just a little over 2 years ago, if I had actually been sitting in the pew listening to someone talk about what I'm going to be talking about, it would have been with a high level of cynicism and some serious questioning as to, whoa, well, wonder where this is going, kind of a deal. I'm really not weird. Well, some people say I am, but I don't think that in my practice of theology I'm too weird, but there are some principles here that are profound for us today. So let's pray together. Father, I want to thank you for who you are. I want to thank you for your Son Jesus, that you sent him here among us, to show us what God is like in the flesh and to show us what a man is like who truly, completely trust in the Heavenly Father as we can do. And I want to pray, Lord, for each person here that is hurting, that is broken, that is in pain emotionally and physically. I pray, God, that you would extend through your Son, Jesus Christ, a healing touch on their life. Whether it is their dream that has been shattered, whether it is their body or their emotions that have been shattered, whether it is lifestyle choices they've made that are an anchor around them, pulling them down and keeping them from being able to breathe healthy air. And I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. A number of years ago, I began to ask the question, why is it people go to church? Why are you here this morning? What motivated you to get up this morning and to get dressed and to eat and to argue on your way to church and to finally get here? Why are you here? Why do we come to church? And they actually, if you go online and Google why people go to church, you'll find out that there are organizations that have all actually done a body of research. And they've done demographics which would tell us why, high school and college students go to church, and why it is that single people go to church, and why it is that people in their 20s and 30s, and young marrieds and old marrieds, and you can get all the demographics as to why it is that people go to church. But as I read over that, what I extrapolate from my own personal experience and from interacting with people and having been involved in churches for so many years, I think people go to church for 3 reasons. I think people go to church because they want to hear from God. I think that's why you're here this morning. You're here because you've got something going on in your life and you hope that God is going to speak to you at that point of your need. And you hope that God is going to somehow say something to you as someone opens the Bible or as someone encourages you out in the lobby. You hope that God is going to say something to you that's going to be a life buoy. It's going to buoy your spirit. It's going to give you hope. It's going to pull back the shades on a dark day and allow a bit of sunshine to burst into your soul, giving you the belief that tomorrow is going to be better than today. We come to church because we want to hear from God. We also come to church because we want our lives to have a larger meaning than they do. We want to connect with a cause that we believe is going to make a significant difference in the lives of other people, and so that the sum is greater than the individual parts. We believe that if we can work hand in hand and arm in arm, if we can bend our backs and do the hard work, we can make a difference in this community. And you are a church that is in the middle of a community that's got many unique needs and a phenomenal opportunity for the grace of God to really be touching the lives of so many people, and the resources that you have cooperatively as you pull them together to have a greater impact upon this community and even upon the world is greater. And for those of us who are looking for a greater meaning to our life, church gives us that. But there's a third reason that I believe people come to church, and I think that's what this passage addresses. I believe that we come to church because we are broken. We come to church because we want to be healed. We want our bodies to be healed. We want our minds to be healed. We want our emotions to be healed. We want our relationships to be healed. We want our finances to be healed. We want our lives to be healed. We want to be healthy. We want to be free of the emotional and the physical strain and the stress. We really hope that God will touch our lives and do for us what we see Jesus doing as we read through the pages of the four Gospels. We wish that we could follow along with Him and get close enough to Him like the woman with the flow of blood, that we could just touch the hem of His garment. Because we know if we could just touch the hem of His garment, Jesus would heal us and make us whole, and our lives would be transformed and different. Isn't that why we come to church? Really, when you think of those three reasons, I bet you all these other survey results could be subordinated to if I was making an outline and I made those the 3 points. I bet all the rest of them would fit underneath those 3 points. I want to be healed. I'm a broken, hurting man. I'm a broken, hurting woman. I'm a confused student. I'm a single person that kind of wonders what my life is going to be about. And I want to be healed. I think we're like the man in John chapter 5, whose story we find told here. In John 5, we read, after these things, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. This feast that he went to was the Feast of the Booths. It was a feast that took place between September 15th and 21st, or October 15th and 21st. It was a celebration in which the people would bring in their first fruits. They were celebrating God and giving them this bountiful harvest. But they were also remembering the 40 years when they wandered in the wilderness, and there in the desert, God provided them with food. And so when they bring in the fruits of their harvest, they build outside of Jerusalem these 3-sided booths, and they make the roof out of palm branches or boards so that in the evening they can see the stars through, because it was a reminder to them that their families lived in tents and booths in the wilderness for some 40 years. And so as all of these tens of thousands of people were camping outside the walls of Jerusalem, and thousands more crowding through the city, going over to the temple where they could celebrate God and worship Him, that was when Jesus came. Jesus came to that place. The Jesus who, when we read through the four Gospels, and I've been so impacted by Jesus in the last 2 years, I've been reading through the Gospels every single month, all 4 of them. So all of these stories I've now read 24 times in 2 years. I don't know if it's a record, but it's raising my average, okay? And it's been cool to follow Him every single day, now for 2 years. And some of the things I've noticed is that the word power is important in the life of Jesus. In fact, the word power and powerful are used 18 times in the 4 Gospels in reference to the words and the works of Jesus. And the words of Jesus are immensely powerful, and that's important because in a few moments He's going to speak. And when Jesus speaks, He speaks with great power. In John 7:46, some guards were sent to arrest Jesus, and they came back empty-handed. And when the religious leaders that had sent them out said, "Well, why didn't you arrest him?" They said, "No one ever spoke like this man." People who heard Jesus speak were astounded because He not only spoke words with power and wisdom, but He said things nobody else had ever said. Things that flew in the face of the existing religious hierarchy. Everything that they were being taught by the religious leaders, Jesus taught something different that was unique and powerful. In John 18:6, when He was in Gethsemane, and the guards were sent to arrest Him, And they said, we are searching for Jesus of Nazareth. And he said, I am. And by the way, that statement, I am, is the way that God identified himself in the Old Testament. It is one of the names of God. In fact, when we say Yahweh or Jehovah, Jehovah is the English translation of the Hebrew word Yahweh, which is translated I am. So when Jesus said I am, he was saying I am God. And immediately all of them fell back onto the ground. That's a powerful word, isn't it? To speak a word and to have these guards, these troops, these soldiers all just fall back to the ground. The words of Jesus were powerful. John 2:25, John 21:25, John says, if all of the things that Jesus did were written down in detail, the books could not contain, the whole world could not contain all the books that would be written. Of the 3,779 verses in the Gospels, 727 of those deal with the healing ministry of Jesus. There are 35 miracles in the Gospels, and we are about to look at one of them. And it's very important that when Jesus speaks, we remember this is nobody speaking who is ordinary. This is Jesus, a man whose words have tremendous power speaking. Verse 2, now there was in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda. Bethesda was literally a swimming pool. The word for pool is only used here in all of the New Testament, and it does not speak of a wading pool. It speaks of a swimming pool. This was a place where people could swim, but it was not a country club. On the contrary, the word Bethesda means house of mercy. It was a hospital. And it was the hospital where the sickest of the sick, the incurable, were sent to this swimming pool. And so we read, it is called in the Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porticos or porches. And in these lay a multitude of those who were sick. Well, how sick were they? Well, they were blind. That's sick, right? They were lame. That is sick. And they were withered. They were waiting for the moving of the waters. So here you've got the blind, you've got the lame, you've got the withered. You've got people for whom medical science at the day had no means of healing or treating these people. These were the most desperate of all people whose families had brought them to the house of mercy and left them there. Why? Verse 4. For an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred up the water. And whoever then first, after the stirring up of the water, stepped in was made well from whatever disease with which he was afflicted. Well, that's why they were there. It was their only hope. It was their last hope. It was their final hope. They were there for the same reason we're here today. People say that folks in church are hypocrites. Well, that's why we came to church, because we're messed up. Well, people in church are really screwed up. Well, why do you think we came? Do you think we would have come to church if we weren't screwed up? If we weren't broken people, if we weren't battling with addictions, if we weren't battling with all these issues in our life, why would we be in church? Come on, man, it is a hospital for broken people. We are here because we got desperate at some place. And those of us who have come to faith in Christ have discovered at the point of our greatest desperation, the love of God in Jesus Christ reached down and touched us and transformed us. Hallelujah. Man, I like this preacher. That's why we're here. And that's why they were there. But you got to admit, man, I mean, once a year the angel of the Lord stirred the water. An angel of the Lord went down there in certain seasons. Okay, maybe it was more than once a year. Maybe it was once a quarter. But the odds were not, I guess they were better than winning a lottery ticket. And yet a lot of desperate people buy lottery tickets. They scratch those babies off, hoping they're going to win because they saw on the news that someone did. 1 person in 100 million. It's more likely I'll get struck by lightning. But if I don't buy the ticket, I can't win, so I'm going to buy it. And they lived with that hope and that expectation. And they were there because they had seen the water stirred up as this angel of God reached down and stirred it up. And then the race began. You know, which crippled or lame or withered person was going to be able to scoot or glide or slide or be pushed into the water, or even better, have a family member toss them into the water. That's what you want, because that's faster than anything. I mean, hey, if you got a family member pick you up and carry you into the water, you're going to get there faster than the rest of the cripples. But there is a problem, and that is most of your friends have got jobs, right? So we read on in the story, verse 5, and a certain man was there who had been there 38 years in his sickness. Now, I'm curious, how many people in this room, raise your hand in a moment, how many people in this room are 38 years or younger? Raise your hand. So we got people here that basically this would be your whole lifetime sitting there at this pool, hoping and waiting that somebody will put you in the water before anyone else gets there. The race of the cripples. Can I get there fast enough? 38 years in his sickness. Wow. That is a long time to be disabled. That is a long time. Most disabilities that last that long are terminal. I mean, most people I know that have MD or MS or one of these debilitating diseases, or even folks who have suffered an accident that have been paralyzed by it. 38 years is a very long time to live with a disability. 38 years is a very long time to pray God will heal you. 38 years is a long time to hope that somebody will throw you in the pool of water right after the angel has stirred it. And so what does Jesus do? The first thing he does is he sees this man there and he speaks to his dream. When he saw him lying there and knew he had already been there a long time in that condition, he knew. He knew. Now, you just think about your issue and how many times you've called out to God praying for deliverance, and you have not gotten an answer. At least you haven't gotten the answer except later or wait. And to me, later and wait sounds very much like no. It feels like no, doesn't it? I mean, later or wait seems to me like no for now. And when I'm hurting and I'm in pain, or someone that I love is hurting and in pain and heading towards death and disaster, praying for them day after day and week after week and month after month and year after year is an extremely difficult thing to do. It's painful. And it would be very easy to understand that that man had given up all hope. All hope. But Jesus knew, and I find that very comforting to me. If I've got something I've been praying for a long time and I sometimes feel God's forgotten about me, I can read this passage and know that God knew how long he was in that condition. So however long you've been praying to God about your situation, you need to understand Jesus Christ knows. But it's one thing to know, it's another thing to care. And it's very easy to think, okay, God's omniscient. He knows all things. Of course he knows. That ain't my issue. My issue is if he cared, why didn't he do something about it? Because we do say, saying that you care doesn't mean a whole lot, but showing that you care means everything, right? People don't know how much you love them until you show them how much you love them. So what's the deal here? Then it raises the question, well, how did he know? Did someone tell him? It raises the whole issue of the divinity and the humanity of Jesus. It says in Philippians 2 that during his incarnation, Jesus Christ did not exercise his divine attributes. That doesn't mean that he was no longer fully God and fully God. He was fully God and fully man. But he chose not to exercise those attributes. Let me give you an example. Everyone in this room, I think, at least most everyone in this room can see. So close your eyes for just a moment. Close them. Now with your eyes closed, let me ask you this question. Just give me a yes or no answer. Do you still have the ability to see? Yes or no? Are you exercising that ability? No, you are not. Open your eyes again. What Jesus did during his entire life on earth is he closed his eyes to his divine attributes of omnipotence and omniscience, his all power and his knowing everything. He closed his eyes to that, and during his entire earthly ministry, he never once tapped into his divine attributes to know or to perform any miracles. Well, then you say, how did he know? Well, John chapter 5 is a cool chapter because if you read it later on, what you will discover is he only did what the Father told him to do. He knew this man was in that condition because the Father had told him he was in that condition. That's how he knew. He knew the same thing. He knew things the same way we would know things. He not only was an example, as I mentioned before, of what God is like in the flesh, but what a man is like who truly relies upon God at all times. He knew the man had been there a long time because the Father had told him the man had been there a long time, and he was so attuned to the Father that everything he said and everything he did was an expression of the will of his Father. I think that's kind of cool. That gives me hope, man. I mean, really, come on, think about it. Jesus did all these miracles because he was listening to the Father, and the Father was working through him. And he said, as I go, you shall go. As the Father has sent me, so send I you. Greater works than I have done, you shall do also because I go to the Father. Listen, man, he was not making it up. He meant it. And what a wonderful example. He knew he had already been there in that condition a long time. And so he spoke to his dream and he said, do you wish to get well? And the sick man answered him, Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up, but while I am coming, another steps down before me. Now, some folks might think he's making an excuse, but I think what he's saying is there's no lack of desire here. I'm lacking in a friend. I've still got the dream. I'm still wanting it. I'm still believing God for it, but I just don't have anyone to throw me into the water. Think about it, man. So a family member takes him there every day for 38 years in the morning. Whose job is it? Is it his brother's job, or is it his dad's job, or his mother's, or have they hired someone to take him there to the house of mercy, the hospital at the pool? If someone takes him there every day and leaves him and picks him up in the evening, and they drop him off, and he says, man, come on, stay today. The angel may move the waters. I can imagine the response he got of cynicism. Give me a break, man. You're still believing that stuff? It's all make-believe. Come on, you've been 38 years doing this. Why don't you just, get in the pool and kind of float around a little bit and exercise whatever muscles you can exercise? Man, this is all just a myth. If he's living today, he might say, you believe in that kind of stuff? Yeah, well, maybe you still believe in Santa Claus at your age. And no offense to any children here. You get the point I'm making? This was a man living with disappointment and no doubt the cynicism. Oh yeah, there's a lot of religious fanatics out there that think God still heals people and moves the water, but it's not going to happen to you, okay? So I'll pick you up after sunset. And yet this guy said, Sir, there's no one to put me in the water. And I think what he was saying is there's no lack of desire. There's a lack of opportunity. You see, I think it was his dream that kept pulling him back. His dream of wholeness. His dream of legs that were strong, and a back that was strengthened, and arms that were powerful. And that dream of being able to walk and run. And that dream of being able to play with his children if he had children. That dream of being able to live a healthy life. That dream of being able to do the sorts of things healthy men did. That was a dream that he never, ever let go of. And it's very easy when we're kids. As men, remember when we were little boys, the dreams we had? Every man in this room, when they were a kid, we dreamed about playing professional baseball. And I can remember the dream. It's the bottom of the ninth. It's the final game of the World Series. Your team is down by 1 run. There's a man on third base. You got the bat. You are the final batter. 3 balls, 2 strikes. The final pitch is about to be hit. And man, in my dream, I swing and miss and lose the World Series. What kid ever dreamed that? Come on, man. No kid ever dreamed that. It's 3-2. It's the bottom of the ninth, and you swing and you knock that baby, and it's like Field of Dreams. Man, that sucker goes so high and so far, it breaks the lights. And you win with a 2-run home run to win the World Series, and you're the MVP, and you get the ticker tape parade in New York City. That's the dream every kid has. But life steals it away. And disappointment steals it away. And loss steals it away. And illness and pain, they steal away the dreams. And we end up just wanting to get out of bed each day and make it through the day. There is no longer that dream of wholeness. And Jesus comes along and He says to you, do you want to get well? Do you want to be well? Do you want that dream that you had to become reality? Do you want a little bit of a billows to stoke a little bit of fire into that dying spark of a dream you've got? Do you still dream? Jesus is the God-man who shows us what a man is like who relies on God. And this man of a great power asks the question to you and me today, do you want to be whole? Do you want to be whole? I kind of suspect this guy thought that Jesus was going to throw him in the water. Of course, Jesus could have summoned an angel. He could have said, hey, Gabriel, come on down here and throw this guy in the water. But why do you need an angel to throw someone in the water when you got the Son of God standing in front of you? He spoke to his dream. But he didn't just speak to his dream, because that would kind of be frustrating, wouldn't it? Many people speak to our dreams, but he did more than that. He healed his hurts. Verse 8, Jesus said to him, arise, take up your pallet and walk. And immediately the man became well and took up his pallet and began to walk. It was a double miracle. A double miracle. The first miracle was he healed the man completely. The second miracle was that the guy had the physical strength and coordination to get up and roll up his mat and walk out of there. Now, how many of you have ever had a cast on a broken bone on your body? Raise your hand. Oh, wow, man, we got a lot of broken bone people here. I remember I tore my right knee. In fact, I was playing football when I was in the 9th grade and blew out my right knee. And I do tell people, like I told the men, if that hadn't happened, I no doubt would have been bigger, faster, stronger, tougher, meaner, been an NFL quarterback. Or a pro hockey player. That's probably what I've been really good at, yeah. Yeah, let's get down. Yeah, real tough sport. Yeah. So, when I got that, I had a cast from all the way to the top of my leg down, and I remember when I got it off, I was ready to go back and play football, except that my knee was nothing but bone and skin and a real thin layer of muscle, and that was it. And I mean, it was so atrophied. To walk, I had to keep my leg in the same position as it had been in the cast, and it took months and months of therapy, doing all kinds of exercises to get that muscle built back up again so I could walk and run as I had been able to walk and run before the cast on. Well, here was a man who had been disabled for 38 years. And when Jesus said, get up and take up your mat and walk, he immediately was able to both get up, grab the mat, and walk away. It was a double miracle. It was profound. He didn't say, get up and I will give you a script for physical therapy, and if you work really, really hard, in 3 or 4 years you might be able to walk. He said, get up and walk. Now this raises some important questions in my opinion. Why didn't he heal everybody in the hospital? He certainly could have, couldn't he? But he did not heal everyone in that hospital. He healed one man. And this is the mystery of divine healing. There are people with faith who are not healed, and there are people with no faith who are healed. And in fact, there's no mention of this man's faith anywhere in this passage. And as I've been reading through the Gospels, there are stories where people are healed, and Jesus says, your faith has made you well. And there are others like this where he simply heals him, and no faith is mentioned. And remember the story where the guys couldn't get their friend in to see Jesus, and they pulled the tiles off the roof, and they lowered him down on a mat using ropes, and he's swinging there back and forth in front of Jesus. And you remember what he did? First, he forgave his sins, and then the religious leaders got mad because only God can forgive sins. And he said, but to prove to you that the Son of Man has the authority to both forgive sins and heal, get up and walk. Their faith has made him whole. So in this instant, it wasn't the crippled man's faith that healed him, but the faith of the men who brought him and lowered him down that Jesus saw and honored by healing the man. And the problem with this message of if you got enough faith, you're going to be healed, is our faith is in our faith, not in God. There is a mystery to healing. And we will never understand it. Some people are healed, some people are not. Some people are healed today, some people are healed in the future. And I don't understand it. But I will tell you this. I actually, until 2 years ago, was a cessationist. I was of the belief that God, all the miracles ended at the book of Acts. There was no need for any miracles after the book of Acts because the purpose of a miracle was to authenticate the message and the messenger, and that had already been done. We had the Word of God to speak to us. We did not need God speaking to us in other ways, and healing was not necessary. I don't mean that I believe God could heal people, but again, about as often as someone would win the lottery ticket. I prayed for people, but it was a religious ritual as a pastor. I didn't pray for people as a pastor actually thinking they would get well. Are you kidding me? I prayed to comfort them so that they would know the pastor loves them and God hears and God cares, and at least God took into consideration whether he would heal them or not. He just decided not to, and so they died. Kind of a final ritual, last ride almost. And then 2 years ago, I was down in Louisiana speaking, and I spoke at a men's event on Sunday. I was in church, and all of a sudden, I heard this name, Lisa, and I heard the word abortion, and I kept hearing it in my mind over and over and over and over again. And I went to the guy at the soundboard, and I said, is there someone named Lisa here? And he goes, yeah, but I don't see her. And I go, well, if you see her, point her out to me. And he pointed her out to me a few minutes later, and I walked up to her, and I found out that Lisa had not had an abortion. But when her mother got pregnant, her father demanded that she have an abortion. Lisa was a child that during her mother's pregnancy, she was not wanted. Let me just say, from the research I've done on the development of a child in the womb, there's something called attachment. And you understand that what that mother is going through emotionally, that child is going through. You know, if the mother's a drug addict, we know the child will be born a drug addict. Well, if that mother is living under stress, all of those toxins that create stress are being experienced by that baby. If that father's always yelling and complaining to the mother and demanding an abortion and wanting that baby dead and thumping it, doing that sort of stuff, you got an abused child from the moment of birth. And that abuse continued on. So I was talking to a beautiful yet very abused, broken woman. And I said, may I pray for you? And I prayed for her, that God would heal her of this tremendous wound that her father had caused. And she broke down and cried, and God did a miracle and healed her. And then I said, is there any physical thing wrong with you? And she said, yeah. She said, I had acid reflux, and I'm over that, but it damaged my throat, and I live with pain in my throat all the time. And I prayed for her throat. And instantly it was healed. And she looked like a kid that wanted something for Christmas but didn't think she would get it. And when she opened the box, and there it was, her eyes got as big as saucers, and her face was covered with a smile. She was going, it's gone, the pain. She was so happy. And I'm standing there, what is going on here? I thought God didn't heal anymore. Well, that started me on a quest to read every book I could find on the subject of healing, and to talk to people that had more experience on the matter, and I began to see some really amazing things happen. I began to discover that God heals people today. He does not heal everyone, and I do not understand that, but God does heal some. I like the story in John 3:8 where Jesus was talking to Nicodemus, and he said, the wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it's going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. The Spirit blows and moves and goes where it will, and we don't know when or where or how, but we know that it moves. And so Jesus healed her hurts, and the third thing he did was he protected her future. Now, what's about to happen in this story is something that Jesus never did in any other instance after healing somebody. So you're about to read Jesus Christ doing something after healing a man that in no other instance of him healing someone physically did Jesus do this. Now, it was the Sabbath, or Sunday, and on that day, the Jews were saying to him who was cured, is it the Sabbath, and it is not permissible for you to carry your pallet. But he said, he who made me well was the one who said to me, take up your pallet and walk. And they asked him, who is the man who said that to you, take up your pallet and walk? But he who was healed did not know. It was Jesus, for he had slipped away when there was a crowd in that place. Now, here we go. And afterwards, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, behold, you have become well. Do not sin anymore, so nothing worse may befall you. He hunted the man down. And when he found him, he said to him, look, God has healed you. God has made you whole. But whatever sin you were committing, and I have no idea what kind of a sin an invalid like this would be committing. Not armed robbery, probably. Probably not battery, probably not rape. He was probably not doing anything that would require a lot of physical activity. I'm guessing anger, rage, bitterness, cynicism, all of these sins of the heart. I don't know, though. But I do know that Jesus was protecting his future. And that addresses this whole issue about are all healings permanent? No, they are not. This makes it very clear that he was healed, but Jesus also told him whatever healing you experienced, if you keep doing what you were doing, you're going to be unhealed. And not only that, it's going to get worse than it was before. And I also believe in progressive healings. I used to think, well, if God heals, it's 100% all the time for life. Really? Well, what about the blind man that Jesus spit on some dirt and made mud and put it on his eyes and said, do you see? And he said, I see people like trees moving. And then he repeated the process and he said, do you see now? And he said, I see clearly. That was a progressive healing. So sometimes someone will find a mild relief of pain today, and then the next day it will get better and better. Sometimes they will be completely healed. And sometime later they will find that it has returned, or a different form of it has returned. I guess the point is this. We don't know what that guy's sin was, but he knew. And the question that Jesus would say to us today is, being healed is great, but you need to understand, when I heal you, whatever it was you were doing that was harmful and wrong and sinful, stop it. I'll give you an example, kind of a personal story. My wife's not here. She'll be in the next service, but I'll probably tell it then. I'll just tell her to cover her ears. We live kind of out in a town, a suburb. It's kind of a little bit, to get into town, you kind of go down this winding type country road, and we've lived there now for, I guess, 15 years, and I had never, until about a few months ago, seen a speed trap on it. And my wife drives a little red sports car, and she doesn't go fast on the freeway, but man, on those winding roads, she really likes to move along. And so I was driving down Rosemont Road, and sure enough, there was a speed trap. So when I got down the road a little bit further, I pulled over and called her on my cell phone. I said, you better stop your sinful way. I said, because you keep on sinning like you've been sinning, you're going to be in trouble with the law. She said, what are you talking about? And I go, they got a speed trap on Rosemont Road. And she said, okay, I'll be sure and slow down. Same point. God speaks to our dreams, and he heals our hurts, and he protects our future. So a lot of times when Jesus is telling us to stop a sinful behavior, he's not trying to cramp our style. He's trying to keep us healed. He's trying to keep us healed. He's trying to keep you healed. A little over a year ago, my oldest sister, Wanda, called me on the phone and said she had been diagnosed with a terminal, non-curable, non-treatable form of cancer. And she had, at the time the doctor told her that, 6 to 8 months to live, and it was probably down to 3 months to live, and she wanted to come and visit me. So she came up to Portland from Austin and visited me. And while she was there, I prayed that God would heal her. But I mean, you're talking terminal, non-curable, non-treatable cancer. But I prayed God would heal her. And 2 weeks later, she had her blood work done. And when she got the report back, her blood was 100% cancer-free. Her doctor was so stunned by the results, she did another test just to make sure. I said to my sister, it looks like God's healed you. And she said, I don't know. The doctor said she was healed. So a month later, they did another blood test, and her blood was even better than it had been before. And her doctor declared God had divinely and miraculously healed her. One of the other doctors there, having thought that my sister had died, asked my sister's doctor about my sister Wanda, and her physician said, well, she's fine. And her doctor said, well, what was your treatment? And she said, prayer. The doctor said, oh, I'm an atheist. And my sister's doctor said, oh, well. I kind of thought that would be the last person I ever saw healed. I kind of thought it would be one of those deals where for the rest of my life, I'd be telling the story about my sister being healed, and I will be. But oh my goodness, it's astounding to me. It seems like everywhere I go anymore, I see God do the most amazing things. And for someone who didn't believe God spoke to people today and didn't believe that God healed through people today, I'm very much like a toddler. I'm very much one of these guys like with a real childlike faith. I do not have any idea what God is up to, but I sure want to listen to what he's saying, and I really want to cooperate with him in whatever it is he's doing. Because God's in the business of healing people. And it's pretty cool to see what he's doing. I kind of suspect that he even may be going to heal someone here this morning. And I'm just kind of curious, is there a woman here that has been having headaches? A woman here that's been having headaches. And it kind of not I don't know if they're migraines or what, but they kind of start, okay, hold on, they kind of start here and they go around like to the front of the head, like in this area. Is that, okay, it's not you, I don't think. Hold on a second. It might, because this person I'm seeing has brown hair. Your hair is dark brown. Is there anyone else that might be? You got brown hair? You sure do. How tall are you? Yeah. Okay, come on up here. I was thinking 5'2", but 5'3" is pretty close. That's another weird thing. When I hear these things from the Lord, sometimes I go beyond the Lord. Never works. But sometimes they're not so specific. Come up here. So what's going on?
I just get a lot of headaches all the time.
Do you really? And they go in up this way and up to the front?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like me to pray for you? Okay. Are you nervous?
A little bit.
This is a cool girl. She's been up there all weekend running the PowerPoint slides, and I used a lot of PowerPoint slides. And last night she said, yeah, I'm kind of getting the hang of it now, right?
Yeah.
What grade are you in?
I'm in grade 8.
You're in grade 8. Wow, that means you're an 8th grader, right?
I don't know what that
She's in grade 8.
Well, I have a question for you. Do you misplace things?
sometimes.
Oh, you're a prime candidate for Losers Anonymous. I love it when I meet a loser. Okay, what I would like to do is I would like to pray for you, and I'm going to turn off my little mic here because I do have a. Praise God. You're welcome. By Rochelle. Type things, but what I do, I ask the Lord to show me if he's going to heal somebody. And when I first started doing this, the Lord would show me who he was going to heal and what he was going to heal, and then I would pray for that person. I'd turn around, there'd be like 20 people lined up, and it would be really cool because I would see some more people healed, but not everybody. And the reason I turn the mic off is because I get a sense that there's a heart issue. And if there's a heart issue, if someone is harboring bitterness, if someone if they've been wounded in their past, in their childhood or something, oftentimes the physical symptoms are related to what's going on in the heart. And the man that was lowered down, the first thing Jesus did was he forgave him his sins, and then he healed him. He didn't do it in the reverse order. And oftentimes what happens with people is once they have dealt with the resentment that they have or some other wounding that they have happened maybe as a child or something, then when I pray for their healing, they're healed. And other times I'll pray for their healing and they're not, and then I'll ask about the emotional wound and I'll pray for that and that gets dealt with, and then I pray for their healing and the healing takes place. So there's a direct relationship, and we know this scientifically. Someone at Oregon Health Science University had done all this research. I mean, this is a little scientific research on the power of forgiveness from the heart to heal. And there's now scientific data that proves without question that if we can forgive from the heart, not just say I forgive you, but from the heart, it facilitates healing in the body. So it makes sense if we're going to pray for someone to be healed, doesn't it? That we need to deal with the issue of their heart. And that first girl I ever saw healed, Lisa, I just first asked her about, the word abortion was important because she had suffered tremendous detachment from her parents, and it had affected the development of the right side of her brain because that's what's developing when you're in your mother's womb and until you can speak. And so if that issue was not prayed for and healed first, but I do it by turning off the microphone because I don't think it's anyone else's business. You know, it's kind of like, it's embarrassing enough to come up in front of a bunch of people and say, please pray for me. Now, the good news is we have a prayer team, right? And the prayer team is prepared this morning to pray for people. And where do folks go to be prayed for, Pastor?
Well, we're going to have the worship team come out right now. And
Okay.
They're going to lead in worship, so we're all going to stand. And if in fact you would like to be prayed for physical, spiritual, emotional healing in anything, we're going to invite you to enter into this time right now and raise your own expectation to wanting to seek the Lord. So as He...
If you sense that the Spirit of God is touching you right now to be healed, then respond. Don't just sit there, because God may be waiting right now this morning to do something supernatural in your life. And now, having said that, the other folks here that had the issue with the headache, I would like to personally pray for you. But other folks that have got issues, if it's a freedom for bondage or something else, we have a prayer team that has been trained to pray for folks to be healed. And so let's take advantage of this opportunity. For one thing, you got one of the best worship leaders here and worship teams that I've ever sat under. And even if you're not one of the folks that God is calling to be healed this morning, enjoy the worship. Or if church is over at 10:30 and you got to split, that's cool, man. I mean, we're not locking the doors and making everyone stay in here. So I want you to know what a privilege it's been for me to be here with you guys this weekend and minister to you. So we look forward to seeing God's healing power now.